So let me respond to Gabby's question and see if you have something to also help Gabby, because your experience may be closer in time to hers. And I'll tell you her question, then I'll tell you my response. And then Gabby will give Allison a chance to also support you. So Gabby wrote, how do I know my deeper needs and how do I meet them? So let me start with the question first, how do we meet our needs? And remind you both that in Hunger, Hope, and Healing, one of the ways that we start practicing meeting our needs is by doing the things on the body dashboard, because those are objective, neutral needs that everybody's body is designed to need. There are things like plants need water and fresh air, and pets need water, fresh air, outdoor time. They need to move their bodies. So the nutrients that we need, these are pragmatic, and according to our species, the 7 things on the body dashboard are essential needs. So when we practice meeting those, Gabby and Allison, when we see ourselves remembering to hydrate, and that's something that we do intermittently throughout the course of the day, we're actually practicing meeting a physiological need, but it's the same personal respect and strength and consistency that helps us to meet the other, like emotional needs. In the landscape of emotional needs, we say that there are 3 primary needs, like 3 primary colors, and they are safety, connection, and adventure. So for example, Allison, tonight you needed more safety and less adventure. Like the adventure of having your mom be at the house for your husband to do her taxes while she's being verbally assaultive to you, that was not an adventure that you needed to navigate. You needed more safety from her hostility and more connection with your loved ones, your children, and yourself. So tonight you made the choice for safety and connection, which means that you'll have the adventure of making something non-conventional for dinner and having some time with just you and the boys. And you had the adventure of having to speak to your husband about setting a clear boundary. You're also going to have the emotional adventure of, if your mom becomes uncomfortable with this, what she next says to you. And that won't mean that the safety, connection, and adventure that you have generated was wrong or bad. It will mean that she's uncomfortable and that her needs for safety and connection, she doesn't have other ways to meet them. So she breaches a connection by being hostile to you, which can't meet her needs for safety and connection. So it's kind of like an unwinning situation for her. But what you've done is say, okay, safety and connection. Therefore, you're able to have the adventures of personal care and well-being, conversations with your husband, clarity and boundaries, and so on. So Gabby, when we think about our deeper needs, if we have these 3 strong primary needs, safety can show up as things like, I need stability, consistency, grounding, I need enough mental rest, I need safety, even I need to sometimes be like a homebody or the place that feels most grounded or stable to me. And connection, I probably need things like reassurance with other people, inspiration, courage, mutuality, reciprocity. Like, it's wonderful to have a friend that we can share with and we feel safe, but if they don't have anything to share back with us, it doesn't help our sense of connection and may not make us feel ultimately really safe. And so there's like 2 buckets of needs there, but they're connected to each other, and they're actually enormously connected in our brains, in the species that we are. Safety and connection are wired together. And that's why sometimes we as children, we choose the connection, even if there isn't safety in a connection, because we are dependent upon connection in order to survive. So this is the case, for example, when a child chooses connection with an abuser and they don't know they're doing that. Or we choose connection with friends in our childhood circle who really aren't the best for us, but we need connection. And we don't want to be the only one standing alone on the playground. So we migrate to the people that we can find some connection with. So our species needs safety and connection. And without those 2 being in tandem, some people will choose connection even if it's not the healthiest choice. Others will choose safety, and that will look like withdrawal or isolation. They'll distance from connection. And so these 2 really do go together. And finding out how we have enough consistency, and mutuality, grounding, and courage together, we actually work on that by learning how to share in hunger, hope, and healing, for example, by setting up our body dashboard so we are feeling more cared for by ourselves, and then asking, okay, in my safety needs, where can I bring in more consistency or more grounding to my life? And in my connection needs, where can I bring in more assurance or reciprocity? And then we get to have the third need, which is dependent upon the first two needs being satisfied. The third need is called adventure. If we don't have safety and connection, adventure is like risk-taking. Adventure up here is like, I'm going to prove it to the world, but we don't have a good foundation for safety and connection. So the adventure part is actually kind of terrifying sometimes to people around us. Sometimes it's terrifying to parts of us. But adventure, when there is this foundation of safety and connection, adventure is something like the adventure of disclosing something about ourselves to this friend, where we see our vulnerability, or they disclose something about themselves. So vulnerability is one of the adventures. They disclose and we feel, oh, my heart can really open up to this person. Their vulnerability is teaching me about compassion. Or adventure like I was saying to Allison, with enough safety and connection, you had the adventure of setting clear boundaries. Beyond that, adventure is also like, how am I going to be my creative, more full spectrum self? How am I going to be my 360 self in life today? What am I going to bring forward that I normally don't have time for, or I normally don't feel like people are going to welcome it? If I have enough safety and connection, I can try that on. What is my adventure? So this is a process, Gabby, and it goes kind of slowly, because we're rebuilding little pathways in the brain and the body where the synaptic connections are going to be making sense. But we also go a little bit slowly because getting to know ourselves, it isn't an overnight event. We also need consistency and camaraderie with ourselves so we get to know what our deeper needs are. Let me pause there and see if you want to type anything in the response about that, you can let me know. And Allison, would you like to add anything about the three primary needs?
Sure. I would say that what automatically came to mind for me is just getting quiet and seeing if anything comes up. That can always be helpful because sometimes our needs will pop up when we give ourselves a chance to really be still. And then I would also say pay close attention to things that don't feel good. And that's kind of telling you what you don't need. And whatever you don't need, there's probably an opposite of maybe what you do need. For example, if you're feeling exhausted, you need more rest, and just some of the other things that Sarahjoy had mentioned on the body dashboard. Just pay attention to what doesn't feel good. Be still with it. Trust the body dashboard and the process that Sarahjoy is taking you through, and know that the answers will come. If something doesn't feel good, it's not right. It's not right. That's a huge from your intuition.
Learning what doesn't meet our needs is really key, right? So many times in my early recovery, like I would go to something and I would be there, maybe this was earlier in my life on the East Coast still, like a barbecue or a potluck or something, and I'd be there like, oh, these aren't really my people. I don't know what to say. This isn't my food. Okay, this was a bad idea. Now I'm binging, right? And like, I couldn't see in advance, Gabby, but I could see in hindsight that kind of event wasn't going to help me to meet my needs. I wasn't going to get my needs met there. Other people were going to have their needs met, but that wasn't how I would find camaraderie or reassurance, right? So sometimes, Gabby, we only know what our deeper needs are in hindsight. And that can be painful because we look back and from a place where we're in pain and we say, oh, okay, that didn't really meet my needs and I didn't know what my needs were in advance. So I couldn't set myself up for success, as it were. But it's also true that in hindsight, we can see what our needs were that got met. For example, today you're here for the call. Maybe you can look back in a half an hour or an hour or a couple hours from now and say, oh, okay, that met my needs for connection and inspiration and reciprocity. Because Allison is sharing openly and I'm responding and we're connecting with you, even though you're only chat, we're connecting with you as a person. So you could look back in a couple hours and say, okay, what needs got met for me? Oh, okay, I see how that happened. And then Allison is saying, in hindsight, the issue with the taxes, you could see what needs weren't going to be getting met. And then you were able to, yeah, she had the adventure of changing her mind and making different plans. Mhm. Yeah, very good. Is that helpful, Gabby? She said, thank you both in the chat.